to enter a really radical new worldview.
We are.
We're taking a close look at the work of Safa Kaçmaz, who argues that the language of ancient history, whether it's in Sumerian tablets on the pillars of Göbekli Tepe or even in sacred texts, has been profoundly misread.
That's right. And this source, it doesn't just offer an alternative reading. It basically accuses modern scholarship of fundamentally misunderstanding how the ancient mind even worked.
And it focuses on three core symbols.
Exactly. Kaçmaz argues that the three most enduring symbols of the ancient world, the animal, the tree, and the mountain, they're not the cosmic metaphors we all think they are.
For centuries, the default academic interpretation has been, well, frankly, pretty poetic. Scholars see an animal figure and they immediately label it a cosmic entity.
And the tree is the pillar of the universe.
And the mountain is a holy place close to heaven. It's all very evocative, but Kaçmaz says this is just a modern scholarly habit. We're just projecting our own mysticism onto people who are dealing with extremely concrete, rational social structures.
And the core thesis here is really crucial. Ancient people were not writing origin myths about the cosmos. They were drawing up a detailed, rational map of their own society.
Their world.
Their world, exactly. Their structure, their production, their alliances, their power.
So if we strip away all that mysticism, we're left with what he calls the sociogonic formula. The trinity of symbols, what we're calling Havan, Isas, and Das, animal, tree, and mountain, are, in this new reading, concrete representations of ancient social reality.
And that's really the mission for our deep dive today. We're going to try to read these ancient narratives not as mysterious tales, but as, rational, documentary evidence of social organization.
Okay, so let's break that formula down.
Okay. Havan, the animal, is the society unit, the totem. Aas, the tree, is agricultural production and property. And Da, the mountain, is the institutional center, the central temple that governed everything.
They're material facts first, divine narratives second.
That's the idea.
Now, to even begin reading history this way, Kaçmaz has to launch a pretty big critique against traditional academia, especially this concept of ilkal bilans, or primitive mentality. So why is rejecting this idea that the ancients had a primitive mindset so foundational to his work?
Because if you assume the ancients were primitive, you just dismiss their writings as superstition. The source material points out that academics, and it's specifically mentioning scholars like Krishna Demirci, rely on this concept to explain away anything that doesn't fit a modern rational framework.
Okay, so give me an example.
Well, if we read a modern political text that says strong national alliances uphold the state, we understand that as a rational statement of social dynamics.
Sure, makes sense.
But if an ancient text says the world is on the ox's horn, we instantly file it under myth or, crude superstition.
Right.
Exactly. Kaçmaz argues that this isn't an ancient deficiency. It's a modern intellectual failure. The ancient human was operating with an extremely precise, rational language of social organization and property rights.
So when they wrote about a deity performing a ritual or a taboo being enforced, they weren't just being, bizarre.
Not at all. They were laying down the law, establishing ownership, or defining an alliance structure.
That makes profound sense. It really elevates the purpose of all those rituals. So strict rules like sacrifice rituals or food prohibitions, they aren't just spiritual obligations.
They are concrete social mechanisms that define who belongs and who is allied with whom. And that's the essence of the sociogonic method. It's not primarily about studying religion, it's about reading history through the framework of religious texts.
So religion becomes the history book.
It becomes the verifiable history of property relations, territorial boundaries, and power structures, but stripped of our modern mystic interpretations.
Okay, let's apply this new lens then. Let's start with the first symbol, Havan, the animal. For most of us, I think it's hard to shake that image of the cosmic animal carrying the universe on his back.
It is.
So why does Kaçmaz argue that this cosmic animal is basically absent from the earliest contexts?
Because the animal symbol is something much more immediate and sociological. The toplumberum, the society unit itself. Think about hunter-gatherer and shepherd societies like the culture we see at Göbekli Tepe, GT.
Before organized agriculture.
Right, before agriculture, how did communities define themselves? Through the animals they hunted or protected. They organized themselves through specific animal species or animal totems.
And Göbekli Tepe is this incredible visual catalog of that pre-agricultural society, isn't it?
It's absolutely perfect for this. The sources analyze the nearly 40 different animal totems, lions, bulls, foxes, snakes, carved onto those massive T-shaped pillars. Now, if we accept Kaçmaz's formula, these carvings are not objects of worship meant to be appeased.
They're what then? Signatures.
They are literally the identification marks of the allied human society units that built the temple complex. The totem defines the community's identity, its kinship, its gender roles, and its generational order.
But wait a second, if these animal figures aren't deities, why carve them on such monumental permanent pillars? I mean, isn't that monumentality itself a sign of reverence or some kind of spiritual focus?
It is a sign of institutional importance, but not necessarily divine worship in the way we think of it. These totems are the signatures of the groups who contributed labor and resources to build the central structure. It signifies a political treaty.
Ah, so the size of the pillar ensures the permanence of the alliance.
Precisely. And what's more, these totems adhere to a very clear structure. Every animal totem defines itself in a tripartite format: male, female, and child.
You mean like Bodanik Dana?
Wolkakaf.
Exactly. Or Koskoyun Kuzuram sheep lamb. Once you decode this, that animal totem equals human society unit, organized by kinship, you immediately provide a rational organizational function for what traditional scholars might just dismiss as simple animal worship or animism.
This also fundamentally changes how we read ancient literature. I'm thinking of that Sumerian hymn fragment, Ben Guk Dibi Biraslanam, I am a lion like the sky.
Right?
Before, we'd read that as a poetic metaphor for strength, but now
It becomes a declaration of identity and political status. I belong to the powerful, high-ranking lion totem society unit, which is allied with the heavens, or, the highest authority. It's an assertion of political rank.
Okay, and what about the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Enkidu's family is described as wild donkeys? That's another perfect example. It's not just an insult. It's not a metaphor for being brutish. It's a precise designation of his background. He belongs to a specific rural shepherd totem society. It shows the inherent political and social conflict between Gilgamesh's sophisticated city farmer society and Enkidu's wilder shepherd society.
Which brings us to our next symbol, the as, the tree. The sources make a really critical observation here. The tree of life, or any plant totems, are completely absent from Göbekli Tepe. Why is that specific absence so powerful for Kaçmaz's argument?
Because it proves that these symbols are not universal cosmic constants. The symbols are contingent on social reality. Since Göbekli Tepe represents a society before established agriculture, the concept of a plant totem just had no social utility.
It hadn't been invented yet because it wasn't needed.
Exactly. The Bitki totem, the plant totem, it only emerges with that monumental shift to agricultural society, which is exemplified by Sumer.
So the tree isn't holding up the sky. It's holding up the economy.
Precisely. The tree, the fruit, the seed, these all emerge to represent property, production, continuity, and intergenerational transfer. It is the source of life and wealth within a settled farmer community.
And what about myths, like the Halupu tree in the Inanna myth, the one with the serpent, the bird, and Lilith living in its different parts?
Kaçmaz interprets that not as a three-layered cosmos, but as an illustration of different social elements or totem groups, a serpent totem, a bird totem, all vying for control or living within the same shared productive structure. It's like a localized political map of who controls which aspect of the tree or the production system.
Now, this shift from cosmology to social law allows Kaçmaz to make one of his most radical reinterpretations, the story of the forbidden fruit in Genesis. If the tree represents production and property, what on earth does the prohibition against eating the fruit mean?
It changes the entire narrative from a spiritual fall to the foundation of a social contract. Kaçmaz argues the prohibition is not a cosmic rule about gaining moral knowledge. The prohibition against consuming the fruit, the Mevi Asar, is a social issue related to establishing crucial boundaries within the new sedentary agricultural society.
Okay, but the specific claim is that this taboo is linked to the issue of child cannibalism. That's a huge claim. How is that justified?
It is, and the justification lies in the linguistic analysis. Kaçmaz demonstrates that the word used for fruit, mev, is linguistically defined as sokuk, or child, in this specific early context of prohibition.
So the taboo is focused on regulating reproduction.
And preventing the ultimate social collapse that results from consuming one's own future. By prohibiting the fruit or child, society is establishing the most fundamental law necessary for continuity and property transfer.
Wow. So if Adam and Eve's transgression isn't about gaining knowledge of good and evil, but about violating a foundational social taboo, one needed for the agricultural community to even survive, That just flips the meaning of the entire Western religious narrative.
It places the emphasis squarely on social engineering. And get this, the detail that Adam and Eve wear fig leaves is interpreted as the Bitki totem society, literally defining its relationship with production and reproduction.
The fig tree, their food source, now defines their clothing.
And by extension, their modesty and social boundaries. Holy trees, the fig, the olive, the date, they're not abstract symbols. They are tied directly to haram halal, forbidden permitted rules, and specific enforceable social boundaries.
Okay, finally, let's turn to the third symbol, Da, the mountain.
Yeah.
The traditional cosmic mountain concept feels like the most stubborn myth to dismantle. What's the institutional reality of the mountain in this context?
The cosmic mountain is just that, a concept that hides the actual function. Kaçmaz shows through Sumerian texts that Das, or Kur, is often used interchangeably with the Tapınak temple or the Kurumsal Merkez institutional center. The mountain isn't geography, it's architecture and governance.
So when we see the core Sumerian term, Ikur-e meaning house and Kur meaning mountain, we shouldn't be envisioning a mythical peak where gods live.
Absolutely not. The Ikur, the house of the mountain, is the name of the central temple in Nippur. It is the single, centralized institutional structure of the entire community. This physical building is where law is established, where production is organized, where the calendar is managed, and where political power is concentrated.
It's the ancient Capitol building, effectively.
Precisely. So when we read of Enlil's mountain, we shouldn't picture a geographical summit, but the sacred central administrative structure of the city-state that Enlil represented. The power is in the structure that organizes society, not in the height of the stone.
And this structural reading continues directly into later religious history. We talk about Mount Sinai, Mount Zion, Mount Jerusalem, Kutusafa. If we apply this formula, they aren't metaphors for being close to heaven.
They're powerful descriptions of the architectural centers, where the relationship between the people and the divine, or between the governed and the ruling power, is institutionalized, documented, and enforced. The mountain is the place of law, the place of covenant, the physical center of the social order.
Let's go back to Göbekli Tepe one last time. The sources show how this institutional structure was physically mapped out. Those massive T-shaped monuments were built in a T or cross form.
Yes, and this architectural arrangement reflects the organization of the four directions, east, west, north, south, which in turn represented the four elements, or the four primary ritual and alliance groups. It's a physical diagram of their social order.
So the stability of the whole society relied on this central arrangement.
It did, which gives a whole new meaning to an ancient phrase like Dünyanın şivisi şukar, the world's nail or peg comes out.
It doesn't mean the universe is collapsing.
Exactly. It literally means that the centralized arrangement, the alliance system defined by that structure, the central peg or cornerstone, has been removed or broken. The social structure has fragmented. Kaçmaz is fundamentally moving us beyond what he calls cosmic fairy tales and grounding these symbols in tangible, rational social institutions.
It really is a complete paradigm shift. The animal is the totem-defining kinship. The tree is production-defining property. And the mountain is the temple-defining centralized law. What Kaçmaz demonstrates is that ancient society was immensely complex and, well, rational, using a highly precise symbolic language to map its own inner workings.
And that's the final powerful observation. The attempt by some modern academics to label these societies as primitive often just reveals their own inability to read these highly structured social texts outside of modern, dogmatic, and often overly spiritualized concepts. They mistake social precision for spiritual confusion.
And that leaves us with a truly provocative final thought, one that connects these symbols directly to our present day. So we've established that the animal totem, Haven, and the plant totem, Bitki, were defined by the social unit they represented, and by extension, their food rules, who could eat what, how it was prepared. And we know Kaçmaz defines ancient symbols like the ox as an early god figure that represents the Sumerian or Earth society, which leads to that phrase, the world is on the ox's horn.
That historical mapping of social power onto animal symbols is incredibly persistent.
It is. The kuzu, the lamb, was originally a specific concrete society unit in that shepherd culture. Yet, millennia later, we still use that exact same animal totem to describe the ultimate hierarchy. We refer to the lamb, the kuzu, as the Rabble and Rabbi Vig Kruller and Klo, the Lord of Lords and King of Kings.
It's still embedded right there in the language.
So when we use these ancient terms of totemic organization